Hello, this is Richard Watson for L'Anglais the Easy Way. Here's a question for you. Do we need to know grammar? What's the role of grammar in learning, especially learning without a teacher and without a method, as we've been talking about? You've maybe got the idea that I don't like grammar. That's not the case. I tend to think it's not a very useful way to think about how we actually learn. I tend to think we learn models or structures, and we learn to manipulate them in a different way. If I give you an example, the first structure I ever learnt in French was a sentence. It wasn't a structure, it was a sentence. Ça fait une semaine que je suis en France. And I used that structure for months and months and months. Ça fait 6 mois que j'habite ici. Ça fait 10 ans que je, etc., etc. It's funny because that's one of the grammar points that French people hate the most in English. And everybody has this problem with the past simple and the present perfect. Again, once you know a model and you can use it, you don't really need to think too much about the reality of the grammar. So I tend to think that grammar is interesting, for sure, and it helps us in some ways to navigate our way through what we want to say, especially when we're translating. And I basically think that a lot of my students tell me they translate from French all the time. I don't hear that. I think it happens, and I think it happens when people don't know the structures. Things they know and they've used, they don't translate. But when they hit something they've never said before in a way they haven't said it before, then they often have to stop and think about it in French. But that's normal. They have to think about it in French. They have nothing else for that. So I think of grammar in this way. If we were sitting in the same room and I threw you an apple, probably 99 times out of 100 you could catch that apple. And if I said to you, how did you catch that apple? Like, how did you calculate the trajectory of the apple? How did you calculate the timing? Which muscles did you activate with your brain to get your hand in exactly the right spot for when the apple arrived? And the reality is we don't know. We do it naturally. We do it by reflex, we could say. Although it's not a reflex, it's something we've done and learned and practiced so that we can do it without thinking. I think that's how we need to speak English. I think the calculations and the trajectory and the timing, that's grammar for me. We don't need to know why grammar works as it does. We don't need to be able to explain how it came about through historical means. We just need to know how to say what we want to say. So my advice to you would be, when it comes to language, just catch the apple and don't think about it too much. Now, that doesn't mean you can't learn structures. How do you learn structures? I think you've got a good idea what I'm going to say. You're listening to an English speaker speaking to you in natural English sentences, and you have a transcription. Go through it. Pick out things you like. Pick out things you might want to say, and learn how to say it. It's right there in front of you. Nothing is hidden. You don't have to make calculations, and you don't have to go and be a detective. The language is right there in front of you. Now, I know for French speakers, that seems too easy, right? In French, you have a lot of grammar that's invisible. A-I-T or A-I-S at the end of verbs, plurals of nouns, etc., etc. That's why French people have to do dictation. They have to learn how to spell words which sound the same. We don't do that in English. In all of my life, in all of my school years, I've never, ever done one dictation. Because there's no reason. If the dictation was, go and buy a big red car, you just write the words. Nothing is hidden. English is laid out in front of you. All you have to do is pick it up and then start using it. And remember, English tenses are easy. Think about, for example, the past simple in English. I went to the shop. He went to the shop. She went to the shop. They went to the shop. There's nothing to do here. It's invariable. That's not the case with French. So French speakers worry about this, and it's not a problem. English grammar is much easier than people think. And the other reality is that 1066 is an important date for English people. French people often don't know what it is. That's the year that a French guy invaded England. William the Conqueror invaded England, killed the Saxon king with an arrow in his eye, and French became the language of the nobility and the court and the administration in England. That's why 30% of all English words come from French. That's why a lot of English grammar resembles French, because it is French. If I give you a conditional in English, I'd like a coffee, please, that's French. If I say, if I were you, I would accept, that is French. If I were you, I would accept. Simple. Don't make it complicated. Pick it up, use it, and run with it. That's my advice to you about grammar. You don't need to know why, you just need to know how it works. And you can see it every time you read it or hear it. So that's all for today. Go back and read the transcription if you want. Don't stress. Everything is there in front of you. I'm leaving it at that. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.